Thank you very much for having accommodated staff with that brief refreshment break. And I'm sure all members on both sides appreciated it as well. So, it is intended to proceed with the debate on the Tobacco Regulations, Validation and Indemnity Repeal Act, which will be led by Senator Campbell. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. Senator Campbell.
Mr. President, I now move for the suspension. Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the second reading of a bill shortly entitled Tobacco Industry Regulation, Validation and Indemnity Repeal Act 2021 and to take it through all its concluding stages.
Thank you very much, Minister. The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to take second reading of the bill shortly entitled the Tobacco Industry Regulation, Validation and Indemnity Repeal Act 2021 and to take it through the stages. Those in favour? Against? Ayes have it. Minister, proceed, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I crave your indulgence. It does get you, doesn't it?
Thank you.
Right. I'll try again. Indeed. It seems I may have erased my No. I think I have it somewhere else. Oh, you promise? God. Leslie Dot.
Senator Campbell, I think that the Minister has an order that we could do. She wasn't planning to do it today? Okay, go ahead.
Very. No. The women are always and
well, you can't lose that now, you know.
Mr. President, may I just ask members to go to page 3 of the bill, and the final paragraph on it says in line 2 of that final paragraph, where it says every person liable to be legally proceeded against on the ground that any of the acts referred to in subsection 1 in brackets, that should actually read 2. So I'd ask members to be mindful of that, because in fact that is a typographical error, so we will not take it as an amendment as such, but it is in fact. Mr. President, the bill before the Senate, by its short title, is the Tobacco Industry Regulation, Validation and Indemnity Repeal Bill 2021, which was tabled in the House of Representatives on March 30th, 2021. The bill was debated and passed on April 13, 2021, without amendment. This bill comes from the decision of Cabinet number 32 of 2019, dated October 7, 2019, and it gave approval for the repeal of the Tobacco Industry Regulation Act, the Act, and the issue of the drafting instruction went to the Chief Parliamentary Council at that point. The decision of the Cabinet is aligned to the Government of Jamaica's Public Sector Master Rationalization Plan, which proposes a reduction of over 190 public bodies, comprising companies, agencies, and statutory bodies, as a critical feature of transforming the public sector. This was based on duplication or inappropriate delivery of functions and the existence of entities that had achieved their mandates and needed to be closed. This ongoing effort to streamline and rationalize the public sector is guided by the policy on the categorization and rationalization of public bodies, which requires a leaner, more efficient and coherent grouping of public bodies. The policy defines and categorizes public bodies, provides justification for their establishment, and specifies their roles and functions. Under this policy, public bodies have been identified for outsourcing, merger, integration into parent ministries, privatization, divestment, and closure. In this regard, the Tobacco Industry Control Authority, being a creature of statute, has been identified as one such public body for closure, and this can only be accomplished by way of a repeal of the Act which established it as a regulatory body. Mr. President, you will observe that the bill incorporates validation and indemnity provisions which are necessary in light of the fact that by a previous decision, number 44 of 1983, dated November 21, 1983, the Cabinet had approved the repeal of the Act and the divestment of the assets of the Tobacco Industry Control Authority by way of sale to a consortium comprising the Cigarette Company of Jamaica Limited and to all other cigar manufacturers. At that time, the Cabinet was advised that the Tobacco Industry Control Authority, when it was operational, was unable to maintain a viable operation and was dependent on budgetary support from the Government of Jamaica. Further, by a subsequent decision number 41 of 1985, dated December 2, 1985, the Cabinet, inter alia, gave approval for the redundancy of the employees of the Tobacco Industry Control Authority and the payment of redundancies to such employees from the net proceeds of tobacco stocks, along with the sales of machineries, fixtures, and equipment. Notwithstanding the decision of Cabinet dated November 21, 1983, although the operation of the Tobacco Industry Control Authority has ceased, the Act continues to be in force. The bill therefore provides for a validation and confirmation of all acts in relation to the winding up of the Tobacco Industry Control Authority, including the divestment of assets, entering into of contracts, and the payment of redundancy to officers and servants done in good faith and inadvertent as to the absence of statutory authority. And B, indemnification of persons against liability arising out of their carrying out of such acts. And C, the repeal of the Tobacco Industry Regulation Act. In the circumstances, given the matters highlighted above, I ask for the full support of this Honourable Senate in passing the Tobacco Industry Regulation, Validation and Indemnity Repeal Bill 2021. I'll take the bill through its clauses. Clause 1, that's the short title, and this clause provides the short title of the bill. Clause 2, interpretation. This clause provides interpretation for the term validation period to mean the period commencing on November 21, 1983 and ending on the date of the coming into operation of the Tobacco Industry Regulation, Validation and Indemnity Repeal Act 2021. Clause 3, subclause 1 validates all acts carried out during the validation period by the Tobacco Industry Control Authority, other persons acting in support of the said authority, and the Government Divestment Committee in good faith, and those done inadvertently on the basis of being without statutory authority, and declares such acts to be validly, properly, and lawfully done to all intents and purposes, and with effect as if done pursuant to the Act and any other act. Subclause 2, this clause describes the nature of the acts referred to in subclause 1. And subclause 3, this clause provides that every person who may be liable to be legally proceeded against on the basis of any of the aforementioned acts, though done in good faith, was unauthorized, unlawfully done, or otherwise illegal or improper, is freed, acquitted, discharged, and indemnified. Clause 4, this clause repeals the Tobacco Industry Regulation Act. And that's the memorandum and reason. This sets out the purpose for the rationale of the legislation. Mr. President, I'd invite comments from my friends.
Thank you very much, Minister Campbell. Senator Scott Motley.
Mr. President, I rise to give my support to this bill. We had indicated to the colleague on the other side that we were not going to delay him. My only wish is that the government would move very swiftly to deal with the other institutions to which he has referenced, so that we can actually have a tidying up of these situations. This particular one has been in existence from 1983, and it is really a travesty that it is only now today that we're dealing with it. And, Mr. President, you would know that there are numerous laws on the books now which need to be treated with similarly. They need to be repealed. They are outdated and inefficient and ineffective in every material particular. So the Department of Legal Reform, in addition to revising the laws, needs simply to go through all the legislation and determine which one comes here for appeal. I am moved, Mr. President, by the fact that the indemnity actually is against the Queen's most excellent majesty, her heirs and successors, as well as against all persons whatsoever from liability. And I certainly look forward to the day when that will not need to be a part of a bill, if it pleases you.
Thank you, Senator Scott Motley. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Scott Motley has indicated our position on this bill. I've always had a problem with these good faith bill, that the wrongs we do are redeemed by the Parliament. And I hope I never live to see the day when one of the things we will be redeeming is parliamentary and beating women. because lawmakers should not be woman beaters and woman beaters should not be lawmakers. And I say that because I don't know that this is a transformation of the public sector. In other words, it's one less body legally on the list of 180 other government entities. But this is a direct years ago. So next time the Minister of Finance speak, he will now say, we have done 42, because he keep repeating the same number over and over in his budget speech. Because this is long time dead. But, Minister, I want you and those in the cabinet to not allow another entity to befall the same fate as this, that is dead but around. And I speak here to the cabinet members, but I also speak to those who the cabinet has enabled to be able to address this. There's a government agency that is now in transition for the last 5 years, but is not being properly treated. This is not an agency that is dead. I talk about the VTDI, the Vocational Training Development Institute, which falls under the ArcTrust, has been in transition cabinet paper after cabinet paper for the last 5 years. But Senator Gale, the workers are not getting the salary increase that has been given to other ArcTrust people. They are disgruntled, and they are concerned that they may follow the same fate as the Tobacco Authority. So I'm going to make a plea to the cabinet members on Monday, re-raise the issue of the VTDI and to put them in a position where they are properly treated. There are workers there, but now they are in limbo. And next thing they'll be forgotten, like this one. So, Mr. Campbell, Minister Hill, please raise it. And Senator Gale, you sit by will of the cabinet elsewhere. Can I ask you to just raise it there in the ArcTrust? What is the status of the VTDI so that those workers can be put in a good position? With that, Mr. President, I rest because it has been long. But believe me, you know, it pains my heart to see some things happening in this parliament, but I will hold my tongue. My tongue will not be drawn today.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Campbell.
I'll take them in the order of precedence. Right? I know my friend Senator Scott Motley is well-intentioned. I'm not so sure that I can say the same for my friend Senator Brown. But the joke aside, I acknowledge that these things are inconvenient, and at best, they do show a system to have various flaws, but given the nature of human institutions, we will have failings from time to time. What I believe is the significant thing to do is to make sure that we do not have a repeat of them. But and given our use of technology, I believe, and the development in that arena, where things get digitized, and we will have a system of scheduling of these acts where they're reviews done on a more timely basis, and so that we're unlikely to have repeat. But for the time being, I think it is appropriate for us to do that which we have to do to correct the flaws which we identify. And of course, given that I don't have the lofty chair which you suggest that yes, I will ask the leader of the government business and Senator Hill to take your recommendations to that place. Accordingly, Mr. President, I'll close the debate and ask that the bill be read a second time.
Thank you, Senator Campbell. The question is that the bill, shortly entitled the Tobacco Regulations, Validation and Indemnity Repeal Act 2021, be read for a second time. Those in favor? Aye. Against?
A bill entitled An Act to Validate and Confirm All Acts in Relation to the Winding Up of the Tobacco Industry Control Authority, including the divestment of assets, entering into contracts and the payment of redundancy to officers and servants done in good faith and inadvertent as to the absence of statutory authority by the Tobacco Industry Control Authority and other persons in the exercise of the functions of the Tobacco Industry Control Authority during the period November 21, 1983, and ending on the date of the coming into operation of the Tobacco Industry Regulation, Validation and Indemnity Repeal Act 2021, to indemnify persons against liability arising out of their carrying out of such acts, to repeal the Tobacco Industry Regulation Act, and for connected matters, read a second time.
Thank you. The Senate will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. Thank you, members. I put clause 1. Those in favor? Aye. I put clause 2 and 3. Those in favor? Aye. I put clause 4. Those in favor? Aye. I put the preamble. Those in favor? Aye. Against? I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Aye. Against? The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Those in favor? Aye. Against? I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment.
Mr. President, I now ask that the bill be read a third time.
The question is that the bill under consideration be read for a third time. Those in favor? Against?
A bill entitled An Act to Validate and Confirm All Acts in relation to the winding up of the Tobacco Industry Control Authority, including the divestment of assets entered into contracts and the payment of redundancy to officers and servants done in good faith and inadvertent as to the absence of statutory authority by the Tobacco Industry Control Authority and other persons in the exercise of the functions of the Tobacco Industry Control Authority during the period November 21, 1983, and ending on the date of the coming into effect of the Tobacco Industry Regulation, Validation and Indemnity Repeal Act 2021, to indemnify persons against liability arising out of their carrying out of such acts, to repeal the Tobacco Industry Regulation Act, and for connected matters, read a third time and passed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Minister?
Sorry, no. Mr. President, we have had an excellent and productive day, but our work is not yet over. It is not intended to pursue any further matter on the agenda, which takes us to the motion on adjournment.
I believe that there is a member who has a contribution to make, and I believe that subsequent to the contribution of Senator Rodriguez Campbell, other members would make a follow-up contribution. Is that correct?
This is the case, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, thank you. I rise to raise a matter of national importance, the matter of gender-based violence. Mr. President, in this regard, we take note of a statement made in that other place by the Speaker on behalf of women parliamentarians. Having been advised that the senators across the aisle do not wish to adopt the statement, we on this side nonetheless wish to endorse the statement, and I therefore wish to read it into Hansard, given its intention of inclusion. We trust the debate will not, however, reflect a divide given the importance of the issue to our nation's health and well-being and its significance to women who have experienced or who may experience gender-based violence at some point. And I will begin with this statement. As women in Parliament, we are dedicated to leadership in our country and committed to the promotion of a safer, gentler, and more peaceful Jamaica in which every person can live free from fear and in which mutual respect and love are practiced among our people. We, in this joint statement, continue to denounce domestic violence in all its forms and regardless of who the perpetrators are or may be. As members of the highest legislative body in the land, we have always committed to ensure that the rights of every individual in Jamaica are protected. We also continue to conduct the business of our country respectful of the laws that govern us. As such, we seek to guarantee life, well-being, and happiness of every individual. In this vein, violence, in particular, gender-based violence, must at all times be denounced as a threat to life, well-being, and happiness of our people. We therefore have never condoned and will never condone violence in any form, but in particular, gender-based violence. Together, we feel the urge at this time to come together in solidarity with our sisters, women who are in the line of fire from the lethal forces of domestic violence, most often meted out to them by men who may be intimate partners, co-workers, family members, or simply community members. We are aware that domestic violence is not relegated to the vicious physical assault often on display and spread across social media platforms, horrible as they are. Domestic violence also includes verbal, psychological, cultural, and social abuse. It is often said that the tongue is a more destructive instrument of abuse than even some of the physical onslaught of women, which is what tends to gain national attention. Gender-based violence, especially against our women, has been a scourge on our society over many years. Gender-based violence is often perpetrated by gender stereotypes that the society promotes, such as men being seen as more manly if they respond with violence to issues and problems they experience, or simply use violence through words and actions to define who they are. Also, there is a stereotype that undermines men and boys who display gentler, more courteous behaviors. Unfortunately, some of our own women also promote these stereotypes. As such, there is need for self-criticism and evaluation in every area of our society if we're going to dispel this scourge on our nation. It is for this reason that we continue to support a national conversation with actions to deal with the reality of gender-based violence, as stated in the National Strategic Action Plan to eliminate gender-based violence. We call for all hands on deck: homes, political parties, organizations, churches, media, schools, service clubs, youth organizations, the cultural sector, etc. We appeal to the media and faith-based organizations for the promotion of positive values in relation to definition of maleness, insofar as that definition affects relationships with our women. We must eliminate the toxic masculinity that often expresses itself in violence against women. We express solidarity with our sisters who find themselves in these violent circumstances. We beg that you be not ashamed, but seek support from any source you trust. For too long, some of these women are silent and blame themselves for the negative behaviors of some of our men. Too often, we unwittingly support their toxic masculinity. As mothers, grandmothers, aunts, church sisters, etc., we must commit to change in how we grow our boys and girls so that we can put an end to this scourge on our nation. We must use every avenue, every relevant government institution and instrument, including by reinforcement through education and culture programs, and the involvement in all sectors and individuals that have influence over the construction of the thought processes of our people. Ultimately, it is our hope that as we all take responsibility for how we see each other as a people, we may espouse the need to be our sisters' keepers, even as we seek to promote the well-being and happiness of all our people. It is about speaking up for positive and harmonious interactions among our people. It is about admitting to and organizing against the negative stereotypes perpetuated both in regard to men and boys who are often presented as aggressive and violent, and women and girls seen as weaker, submissive, always ready to accept whatever is meted out to them by our men. This conversation must also be supported by action. We all bear responsibility to change our reality. Mr. President, that's the end of the speech that was read by the speaker in that other place. And I crave your indulgence to make a brief statement of my own, because I feel this is necessary given the gravity of what is being discussed. Domestic violence, and more specifically gender-based violence, is a problem. In Jamaica, we run the risk of normalizing such behavior, unless, of course, we act now to change tendencies towards violence at home, school, or in the wider society. It is known that gender-based violence can be influenced, caused by varying factors, including accepted cultural practices, harmful gender norms, and poor conflict resolution skills. As a society, we need to examine these causes and work even harder to ease the burden being experienced and could be experienced by anyone in a family against whom violence is perpetrated. As highlighted recently by the Minister with responsibility for gender affairs, the Honourable Olivia Grange, there is work already undertaken and work to be undertaken, such as a review of the Domestic Violence Act. Mr. President, I use this moment to say that we must also address the elements in our culture that glorifies violence and subordinates women. Each of us, man or woman, must ask ourselves, what are we now doing to allow for domestic violence to take place? What can we do differently? Maybe not laugh at that joke, which is actually not funny, but rather is in poor taste. Maybe be supportive rather than critical of someone who has experienced the throes of a fist or a belt. Finally, Mr. President, let us ensure that the members of the police force continue to be retooled and recultured, and to ensure that this process includes them gaining an understanding of how to better manage the specifics of issues relating to domestic and gender-based violence. There's much work to be done, and those of us who have the honor of sitting in this House must play our parts, as must everyone in Jamaica, no exceptions. Let us make our country better, because there is never ever, there is no excuse for abuse. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Senator Scott Motley.
pleases you, Mr. President, I deeply regret that my colleague senator started the presentation giving the impression that the Senate, the opposition Senate, does not share the sentiments expressed in that statement. I hold myself to a particular code of conduct, which is that certain conversations that are held between members of differing sides on certain occasions ought to be kept confidential. But I will not stand here and allow that to be said about this side as though we do not support the call and as though we do not condemn violence. So let me say this, Mr. President. It is my view, my humble view, that this statement did not go far enough.
Mr. President, Mr. President, sorry, no, on a point of order, and just to ensure that we don't, that the path is actually a path that we want to be on. The point that was made was based on the fact that there was a clear indication that there would not be a joining and an endorsement of the Senate, all the women in the Senate, of the statement which was made in the lower house, which was intended. The immediate statement which she made after was to say that she trusts that the debate will not demonstrate any divide on the importance of gender-based violence. So, as a point of clarification, and I just want to say that because in good faith and clarification, because I am concerned at the
I'm on my feet,
reaction
Mr. President.
of the Speaker.
I am on my feet, Mr. President.
It's not fair. It's not fair. What is the point of order? What rule has she broken in the standing order?
Mr. President, words matter. And what the public would be hearing is not what you have explained, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith. What the public would have heard is that we on this side take a different view, and I do. I take the different view that that statement did not go far enough. And I will explain to you why, Mr. President. The reason why we are here having this discussion now, the reason why a joint statement was issued by parliamentarians, the issue why we have been talking about violence against women over the past 2 weeks is because of a video which was circulated.
That's right.
That is a clear fact.
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right.
There has been great care and pain, every effort made to avoid a mention of a video. Every single time the video has come up, there is a howl of protest. Well, let me tell you this. Let me tell you this. The people of this country and outside of this country saw that video and have all condemned the brutality they saw on that video. Now here is a strange, that is the statement which the Speaker read in speaking to how the joint statement of female parliamentarians. But here is a disconnect. The last paragraph of that statement says, further, I have been advised by the Leader of the House that the said Member of Parliament for Central Westmoreland will no longer sit in the JLP Government Caucus and as such will not be under the control of the government's whip. That is part of the statement which was circulated.
Excuse me, no.
So this is a this is what was circulated with please check against delivery.
Mr.
I am not
President.
making it up.
Mr.
Mr. President, I seek your protection.
Point of order.
Because they will have the opportunity to respond to what I'm saying.
Point of order. In the printed copy of the joint statement, the first few on the last page at the top, it states clearly that this is a statement by the Speaker, which is separate from the joint statement that she
Thank
gave.
you very much.
Two different things.
Thank you. Allow the Speaker to continue.
And this is precisely the niceties in which we are indulging, because there is no way in which we want to, everybody wants to avoid doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
Mr. President, on the 8th of March, it was International Women's Day. The whole entire month of March was dedicated to women. In the other place, after the body of Kanice Jackson was found, partially decomposed, there was an agreement across both, a statement of condemnation, shock, and general distress emanating from both sides. Both sides were joined together in expressing how they felt about it. Within a few days, the news came that a teacher from 4 Paths in Clarendon was missing, and her body was found in Sandy Bay in Clarendon. In between, we had instances where a woman was found in her home with her throat slashed. Another woman, 70 years old, reported missing, was found in the bushes again, violated and killed. In St. Thomas, a man killed his wife and then committed suicide. Which woman would not abhor those acts? Which person would not abhor these acts? Interestingly, as I said in the meeting, because I was present, I was a part of the meeting, and that is why I have risen in an unaccustomed way. Because the civility which I normally display in the House, and the way in which I would even disagree with my colleagues, perhaps I misread what the senator was saying. Perhaps I misheard what the senator was saying. I am sure the public can come to their own view, because that is indeed the court of public opinion, and the public can determine what it was that was said. In the same way that I felt that this statement did not go far enough, because it sought to avoid the very issue that impelled it. There was a reason why the women parliamentarians were being brought together to issue this statement. And this matter has not been addressed.
Betrayal, that's what it was.
This matter has not been addressed by members who stand here on International Women's Day, who will stand again in November on the International Day for Elimination of All Violence Against Women, who do not have an independent voice to say, I condemn one of my colleagues. I understand quite clearly that there might be rules in place which will prohibit the kind of action that I personally call for. Action does not have to be embedded in legal rules. Action can be embedded in a stand, a moral stand. And the leaders of this country should demonstrate clearly what kind of Jamaica they want to see. So the women in Parliament, we are dedicated to leadership in our country and committed to the promotion of a safer, gentler, and more peaceful Jamaica in which every person can live free from fear and in which mutual respect and love are practiced among our people. That is something that I agree with. All the words which are written here, I agree with. And words are important, and these words are important. But the words without the action make them just that. Empty. The page could have been blank because there is nothing about this statement that distinguishes it from all the other statements we have made here. We have all, not just women, we have all spoken like this. We condemn unreservedly gender-based violence. Arising out of that video, we decided to condemn violence against women. And it is unfortunate, you know, I did not note that affixed to this was a statement by the Speaker to distinguish it from what was being here. I got the document as a document on delivery, and consequently, I had to take everything into account. And I feel very, very strongly that unless we take a stand, we lose our legitimacy. That's what I feel.
Yes.
Now let me say this. Everybody who I heard speak, no, I'm not going to put it that way. I'm not going to put it that way because I don't want to be inaccurate. Let me say I got the impression that there was a reluctance to admit that there was any connection between the video and the incident involving the Member of Parliament. There was a reluctance. And yet all the actions which were taken against him suggested that something unprecedented had taken place, because there was unprecedented action taken to the point where a sitting Member of Parliament for the Jamaica Labour Party was asked to sit aside from the Parliamentary caucus and be considered an independent member. And then it was to take leave of absence as a member of the Jamaica Labour Party, and then it was to take leave of absence from the Parliament.
What is required, a resignation?
What was all that about? If there is no connection between the vicious act, between an act of domestic violence, what was all that about, this unprecedented action, if there was no connection between that and the action which was being taken? And there is not, I have not heard one woman from over there who condemns violence on every occasion and who will come again in November to condemn violence. I did not hear them dare to raise their voice in protest.
Not a single one of them.
Let me say this.
Not a single one of them.
Not one of them. Shame. I'm going to put my mask over my face.
Mr. President, this was not the speech that I intended to make.
Shame. I don't want to say that, that's why
And I will go to make some observations that I had wanted to make. Violence is pervasive in Jamaica. Doesn't matter what sex. In fact, it's more men-on-men violence that we suffer from that has brought our country to this state. But 1 in 4 women have suffered violent acts at the hands of their intimate partner. They have been made to feel responsible. Sometimes, the first question that is asked is, what did you do to cause him to do this? They have been made to feel shame, so they can't tell their friends and their neighbors what they're experiencing. And this violence cuts across all social classes. It is meted out by men who feel a sense of power and control. It is meted out by powerful men, as well as men who have little power. Women, professional women, women in public life, women at all levels are victims of this violence. Jamaica has the second highest rate of femicide in the world. And let me call it what it is, of women being murdered. There is no well-thinking person who would not feel a sense of concern about what takes place. The survey by the Statistical Institute of Jamaica says that of the 27.8% of women in Jamaica who actually suffer from violence meted out by intimate partners, nearly 3 in 10 have faced emotional abuse, and several percent of the respondents are still suffering physical and sexual violence. And Senator Longmore speaks to that all the time, about the residual effect. I remember her powerful voice in the Joint Select Committees on the sexual harassment as she spoke to how long it could last. And a very strong voice that made us move from a recommendation of 12 months to a recommendation of 6 years. We had a Joint Select Committee which was set up to examine several pieces of legislation: the Sexual Offences Act, the Offences of the Persons Act, Child Care and Protection Act, and the Domestic Violence Act. The report is dated December 2018. In the report, which was tabled, we made some recommendations about amendments to the Domestic Violence Act. Looking at, for example, if one breached a protection order, because currently, if you do, it's a fine of $10,000. And Senator Johnson Smith, remind me, I think we raised it to 150,000. I can't remember what the recommendation was, but 500,000, thank you. We suggested that it be raised to 500,000. And by the time this comes up, we're probably going to suggest that it be even, it will be $1 million. In fact, so concerned were we about the weakness in the legislation as we had watched it play out. You know, the Domestic Violence Act was introduced with good intention. But when you see what happens, you actually now begin to appreciate what needs to be done. And so the Joint Select Committee suggested that it get a separate treatment. And a separate Joint Select Committee should be established to deal with it. I have heard the Minister say that on Monday, the amendments will be approved by Cabinet, and I look forward to the bill being tabled and the Joint Select Committee being established at the earliest. Mr. President, I know that the time is going and there are others who will want to make a response. And I know the women on the other side will want to respond to me. I am sure of that. I assure them that I feel very strongly about the matter, and I am prepared to condemn it, no matter who commits it. You know, when we were doing that Evidence Amendment Act, Senator Sinclair, I warned about a video and its interpretation. And I referenced what had taken place on January 6th on Capitol Hill. And I pointed out how, when I saw the video without the explanation, I actually thought that officer was being cowardly and running away from the people. And then when I heard the explanation, I realized that he was being brave, and he was in fact commended for the stance he had adopted. When I sought to warn that videos are, I was asking that at least a video be agreed, some protection to be given, because a video is capable of all kinds of interpretation. The government was not moved. And so it went into the Evidence Amendment Act as it was. This week, George Floyd got justice in the courts by the jury because of a video. Because a video showed a police officer with his knee on the neck of George Floyd for over 9 minutes. In Jamaica, there was a video being circulated which showed one of the most brutal beatings that we could ever imagine, including with a stool. Including with a stool. The fact of the matter is that the video also shows that people were present. In fact, somebody approached the couple as though seeking to intervene. There are threats of lawsuits. They would have to sue Jamaica and outside. Because when you read every editorial and every public commentary, the public has accepted the identity of the person in that video.
They have not denied it. Guilty.
And he has not denied it. I am told he has not confirmed it, but he certainly has not denied it. So in closing, Mr. President, I simply say that we women have a role to play. We have a role to stand with each other, stand by each other, and to let women know that we are here for them, and we are going to give a voice to their voicelessness. That when they cannot speak, we will speak on their behalf, because we are representatives of their own experience. And I also say to the mothers You rear these men. You give birth to sons. I have a son. I have one child. And we have a duty to encourage our sons to treat women with respect and with love, because we cannot manage without each other. But the only way that we are going to achieve the high aspirations, which is in this statement, of a safer, gentler, and more peaceful Jamaica, is if we rear men, in particular, who understand what it means to love and to let live. So, this line in this statement, where as members of the highest legislative body in the land, we have always committed to ensure that the rights of every individual in Jamaica are protected. That is true. We seek to guarantee life, well-being, and happiness of every individual. That is true. In this vein, violence, in particular gender-based violence, must at all times be denounced as a threat to life, well-being, and happiness of our people. This is true. We therefore have never condoned and will never condone violence in any form, but in particular gender-based violence. That is true. And the women on this side embrace that sentiment. If it pleases you.
Thank you, Senator Scott Martin. Senator Golden Campbell, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is it? Pardon me? Ah, okay. I guess I have to, yeah. Let me just move this over here. Pull that up. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I must tell you that I feel it to be an unfortunate state of affairs today that on this very important and significant national issue, and I say that because it is one of those issues that, while there are a lot of discussions about it here in this Parliament and in the news media, it is an issue that is so significant to Jamaican families across the length and breadth of Jamaica, from Morant Point to Negril Point. It's not a newspaper headline for a lot of families. And unfortunately, on something as important as this, the female parliamentarians in the Senate have not been able to stand up here today and have a unified voice coming together on this issue. And for that, Mr. President, I must tell the Jamaican people, I am ashamed.
Point of order, Mr. President. Point of order.
Yeah, let up soon. Because
Mr. President.
Go ahead, Senator Fraser-Benz.
Mr. President. This is just very unfortunate. What Senator Golden is doing is supporting what Senator Scott Martley said, that the impression that is being governed by the government side is that we on this side is not in support of the call. We on this side feel very strongly that violence against women must not and cannot be condoned. But we also believe that the statement that has been read into the record by Senator Rodriguez deals specifically with an issue which we refuse to name. And until or unless that issue is named, we cannot support it. But we support violence against women. And I do believe, Senator Golden, that you are misleading this House and you're misleading the country.
Thank you, Senator.
I'm not going to get into a bickering match in the Senate because my words, exact words were, we parliamentarians. I haven't identified who has taken any position. The fact of the matter is, Mr. President, there were some very serious and strong words said over there. And when a parliamentarian can get up in a chamber, a senator, and dare to question the motive and the intent of the female parliamentarians on this side, I do take issue with that. And that is what was done. The senator said she hadn't heard anything from this side to condemn the issue, and that is simply not true. Well, then perhaps, Senator, you ought to listen. Mr. President, you know, I can just imagine the number of Jamaicans who are sitting, listening to this, and who may sit in their living rooms later watching us. And they're going to be bewildered because while we sit and bicker across the aisle, there are families undergoing pain. Pain that you don't understand because the issue seems to be who is condemned about a viral video instead of the conversation that ought to be happening about what we are doing nationally to ensure that in Jamaica, when families have this problem, they can get help. This is not a viral video problem. This is a national issue. It's a national problem, and there are too many families suffering for us to be sitting in here scoring political points over issues that pain Jamaican families. The minister, Mr. President, indicated several initiatives that her ministry was undertaking to deal with the scourge of domestic violence, to deal with how we, men and women in our country, have been interacting and dealing with disputes and conflicts in their relationships and their homes. That is what Jamaican people want to hear about. How do I sort out how I relate to my partner, my brother, my sister? How do I get help when they are not able to have conversations? Those are the discussions we need to have. Because families do not go away when somebody is kicked out of Parliament or somebody is punished and put in jail. There's a family that remains that is in pain. And the work we need to do is to ensure how we can talk to each other, work through issues, resolve issues without thumping each other down. And it starts from the shouting and the demeaning things that are said. I agree. It's important for leaders to demonstrate that they are living what they ask others to live. It's important. But in the same way that we have an issue outside of this Parliament, we can very well have it in here. And it's not one and two issues of that nature that are in this Parliament. So let us not be hypocrites. So, Mr. President, we can talk all day and night about who is to take a stand and who must be punished. The fact of the matter is, unless you feel it, you don't know it. Unless you feel it, you don't know it. We can stand up and talk in this Parliament all the time. But when families go through domestic violence issues, when women are beaten, when children are beaten, when men have engaged in that behavior, they need help. They don't need pontification, and they don't need political score points. Mr. President, we have to focus on the important issues, and the important issue is what are we going to do about it. It's all good and well we get up and talk about taking a stand, but what is the government doing about the issue of domestic violence? The Prime Minister laid out several initiatives, Mr. President, in his presentation in the House on Tuesday. I'm not letting him distract me. I'm shutting up so that Jamaican people can hear the foolishness coming from that side of the aisle. He laid out several initiatives. The Minister of Culture and Gender Affairs, responsible, with whom the responsibility for this, dealing with this issue falls, has also laid out those issues. They have talked, Mr. President, about the national campaign to bring in our boys and our men, our women and our young girls to have discussions to talk about the issue. We've talked about amendments to the Domestic Violence Act. Minister, I believe, also mentioned in Parliament the use of the dispute resolution mechanisms that are available in the system to help us to work through these things. Those issues, Mr. President, those initiatives are what we have to focus on, what we can do to fix the problem, not the lynching that is going on, the hypocritical lynching that is going on when there are members sitting in other places who have just as much guilt to bear. Mr. President, those are my contributions today.
Thank you very much, Senator Golden. Senator Morris, Senator Brown, please don't bother with the shouting. Let's try and get through this without the shouting. But Senator Brown, all of us, anyway, let me not go down that road.
Lambert, Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President. No, Mr. President, can Mr. President, Mr. President. All right, sorry. Mr. President, Senator Brown, just calm down. We're dealing with a serious issue. And you're over there shouting. Almost wanting to yes. Mr. President, can you... Jesus Christ, man.
Mr. President,
if there is another incident like this, I'm going to adjourn the Senate. You know, I'm going to let me just repeat it. If there's another incident like this, like a member getting up, shouting across, shouting from either side, I'm going to adjourn the Senate. Senator Morris, continue, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to make my contribution to this motion on the adjournment of the Senate, a motion of national importance, a motion, Mr. President, that I view and treat very seriously because I have adopted a very strong position as it relates to violence against women. Because, Mr. President, no man have the right, and I'm stressing the emphasis on man at this point in time, no man have the right to put his hands on a woman and abuse her in some of the ways that we are seeing in Jamaica. The fact of the matter, Mr. President, is that we have to love, respect, care for our women. And Mr. President, you know, we are moving this, we are participating in this debate largely because of an incident that took place in the western section of the island, reportedly involving a member of parliament, that has triggered outrage and disgust among individuals in the public. And Mr. President, you know, when I heard what was taking place, I asked my wife, who is my most reliable eyes, to describe to me what was taking place. And Mr. President, I cried. I cried. Because there is no way that a man could take a stool and beat my sister and get away with it like that. No way. You are my friend and you are a QC and you would be brought into play immediately.
True. I don't want to lie. To defend you. To defend you?
Well, probably to defend me too. But there is no way what was described to me, Senator Sinclair, is barbaric behavior that must be condemned. Barbaric behavior that must be condemned. There is no doubt that what was taking place in that video constitute cruelty to humanity. Cruelty to humanity. And you know, Mr. President, when what was described to me, I was listening out. I was listening out for two particular individuals, but I'm going to mention one at the moment. And I know that the person gonna feel offended, but I don't want the person to feel offended because I want her to listen to what I have to say.
Sorry, Senator Morris.
That's
436.
Mr. President, might the Senate be granted permission, rather might the standing orders be suspended to permit this Senate to sit beyond 4:30 to complete the business of the day.
Thank you very much. You have heard the question. Those in favor? Again, Senator Morris, continue, please.
Yes, Mr. President. You know, I have sat in this honourable chamber with the leader of government business since 2012. And Mr. President, she has adopted some very principled position as it relates to women. And I mean, there are other principled positions, but the focus is on women. And I was listening out to hear the voice of the leader of government business because, I mean, I know her previous position on issues relating to women. She has piloted a motion that found its way to cabinet that led to the amendment of legislation in this chamber. That is one of the seminal contributions of her in this honorable chamber. And I tell young senators that if they want to make their names in the Senate, just make sure that you carry good motions. The leader of government business did. I remember sitting in that chair that you were sitting, Mr. President, and then leader of government business, Senator A.J. Nicholson, made a blatant error, made a comment about flexi rape. The debate was about flexi work week. And the unfortunate utterance came from Senator Nicholson. You were sitting where Senator Bunting is sitting now, and Senator Johnson Smith was sitting where Senator Lambert Brown was sitting. And I was sitting where you are sitting, and I heard Senator Johnson Smith coming up from the rear, Mr. President, Mr. President. And I knew that this is trouble. I was calling to Senator Nicholson to withdraw the comment because it was unfortunate. It never happened. But the utterances from Senator Johnson Smith at the time and others led to a blatant condemnation of Senator A.J. Nicholson, which ultimately led to him coming around and apologizing to the Senate and to the nation. But I remembered it very well when I heard the situation of the video. And I said I was listening out for at least one dege voice from over there condemning the incident because of her principled position in the past. And Senator Johnson Smith, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. Because if one person I was looking out to stand up and say that this is wrong and it must not be condoned, it was you. Because the truth is that that act of brutality should not take place. And even if it is that you're not certain as to who it is, the mere fact that we have seen certain actions taking place confirms that something is not right. Something is not right. And we have to make sure that we start with the condemnation. But you, Senator Golden Campbell, you know, Senator Golden Campbell, you know I have expressed my admiration for you. But let me tell you something. We can't just operate, move from, and just deal with the generalities all the time. We have to start with the specifics. And the specific instance here warrants condemnation. Because let me tell you something, we cannot be, as lawmakers, coming here week after week to pass legislation to prevent some of these cruel and inhumane acts. And then, whilst because it relates to somebody that we know, we sort of put some legalistic arguments to give protection. And then we're going to go out there and ask John Brown from down the flankers to come tell you, Senator Sinclair, tell the police what crime is taking place down there. And we expect that they are going to listen to us. They have no confidence in us because our credibility has been dashed by our actions in this particular incident. We would have sent a strong signal to the Jamaican people that no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, we're not going to condone this sort of barbaric act against our women. It must stop, Mr. President, and no matter whether it be public, it no matter whether it be private, me condemn violence against women anywhere and whosoever involved in it. Because the truth of the matter is, the women are the backbone of our society. And if you destroy the backbone of our society, you're destroying the society. And I want to say before I sit, Mr. President, we, the men in Jamaica, we, the men in Jamaica, need help. Need help. And that is why Senator Sapphire Langmore, we can't just ignore the video incident, because the man seen in the video requires psychological help. He needs to be treated. That is a sick individual. And what I am detecting in Jamaica is that there is a set of sick men that need help. And the women have to play a role in it. The women have to play a role in it. And decent men have to play a role in it. Because we have to make sure, no say that, we tell the man them, women are not made to be beaten. Women are made to be treated with respect and dignity. And they must be pampered and powdered by us men. We have to take care of them. And Mr. President, there are some things that we're going to have to do. Because we have to start treating and teaching our boys from as early as the primary level, the infant level, to love and respect the girls and to take care of them and to give them greater support. We have to make sure, Mr. President, that we deal with this situation of absentee fathers from the home. We have to treat and deal with that situation, because when there is no father in the home and the mothers have to take care of the boys, by the time the boys reach 14, 15, 16, the mothers can't control them. They don't have any guidance in the home. And then when they leave the home and go to school, the men are not in the school anymore teaching. So all around, we are seeing some problems that we have to deal with in a substantial and significant way. And a couple of years ago, Professor his name is slipping me now. Professor from the EOJ, was that the EOJ? Miller. Professor Miller wrote the book, The Marginalization of Our Men. And we are seeing it taking place now, you know. More and more. More and more. And Mr. President, if we don't deal with them things here, you know, we are going to have a problem, you know. Our women are doing extremely well and progressing extremely well, you know. And I am happy for the women, you know, how they are progressing, you know. But I say to us all in this chamber, Senator Johnson Smith, Senator Donna Scott Martley, Senator Sophia Fraser-Binns, I say to you all, if we not deal with an action plan to bring up the men who are getting very wayward in our society, we are going to have serious problems, further problems down the road. And what you see happen in that video, what you see happening in that video is a result of the marginalization that is taking place. It's an insecure, it's a weak, it is a spineless, it is a brutal, it is a savage and uncaring man that beats a woman. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Morris. Senator Longmore.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I sat here and I have listened, and you know, my approach is a therapeutic one. And Senator Morris, you are correct. Something is not right. There's no question about that. And I think that we all recognize that we are here because as holders of public office, we are to be held to a higher standard of accountability. And I put it to you that viewers of this demonstration this afternoon will be wondering about our appreciation of such a privilege. Are we demonstrating such? What we're asking of others, are we fulfilling? And I am not going to be here to play a political football with something that is pervasive, something that as we speak is probably happening. No matter how much political points we score as individuals, it does not help the persons who are suffering from these circumstances. So I am going to focus on solutions. And the one thing that I will say here, but you know what, no, let me not go there. I'm going to stick to my script. Violence in Jamaica is endemic. There is no getting around that. We need to recognize that what we are speaking about that relates to women is something that is not shocking. It is not surprising because it is part of our culture. Women go through physical violence, verbal violence, sexual violence, and the underpinning to this is usually financial. And I say that if we want to empower women to step away from abusive situations, let us empower them financially. That is how you deal with these situations and enable that there is no repeat of it. Interpersonal conflict in our society is reflected against women from birth to their deathbed, essentially. When you hear about baby mother issues and you hear about fighting over deadlift and in the middle of that, Senator Morris, is what we call father hunger. It is the perpetual absence of the fathers from our homes. And what we see is a manifestation of persons who are suffering from paternal neglect and are oftentimes connected with these issues of violence in our society, and especially against our women. Now, there's an underlying association that very few people have realized. Senator Scott Motley, you listed a few of the women who have died from heinous acts. And I would want for some of our social scientists and otherwise to reflect on every single heinous act of violence against women if there is not an underlying issue around sexuality. And I'm putting it here that the issue of sex and sexual health is one that the Jamaican society does not like to talk about. It is one that is being practiced, and it is being practiced in very unhealthy ways. And those unhealthy ways are manifesting in these heinous acts. We need to increase a comprehensive sexual education program within our society. It is something that needs to be addressed. It is something that needs to be pursued. And the more we hide away from the subject matter, is the worse these crimes will get. It is a matter that is so heinous. I was on call last week. I had to field the call of a 7-year-old who was brought in because she was sexually molested by her grandmother, a 7-year-old female. I've had to deal with circumstances of 12-year-old girls being impregnated by their 17-year-old brothers. We are all very upset. And I hear that persons are here talking about some of us have been silent on this. There are times when the issues hit so hard that you have to step back and you have to look at what is the path to a solution that fixes the problem rather than creating noise around something to score political points. This is not about personal gain. And if you are going to go down that road, okay, let us face this fact. That is what has been demonstrated. And if there is a suggestion, if we are going to go down that road, our Prime Minister has led and has, the Speaker of the House has reported and indicated on actions being taken by someone associated by a suggestion. Nothing proven. There has been many suggestions made on the other side. Where is the action from them? Where's the action? So let us focus on the fact that whilst we are here arguing this, one of the crux of the issues is that some of these women and most of these victims suffer further abuse because they are actually suffering from the inability to act. And what is this inability to act? A lot of women, a lot of victims of abuse suffer from Stockholm Syndrome. This is when the person who is abused empathizes with the abuser to the point where they feel incapable of acting. This is where intervention needs to be had. A lot of the cases that are brought against people can no longer go further because the person feels incapable of acting or refuses to act further by pressing charges. The victim needs mental health intervention. They need to be brought to a place that is healthy, where they are able to recognize that they are victims. That is where our focus needs to be. It is my focus. I am a member of the Senate. It is our focus. This is not a psychotherapy action. This is an action for the people of Jamaica to make Jamaicans healthy. And the victims of abuse know that they can have a voice when they are not being enabled as such. This is not deflection. As I have said, the leader of our party has indicated his stance on this. What has the leader of your party done when it is implicated on your side? Mr. President, my focus, as I have said, what I am trying to focus on is for us as lawmakers and as persons who see to the necessary programs and policies being put in place for the protection of our people, is that we do our job in seeing to the legislative and the care and protection of persons who, and primarily the prevention of persons who fall victim to this. There is absolutely no excuse for abuse in any respect for any individual. And it is offensive that persons would think that because we on this side are trying to find holistic solutions to the problem at large, it is seeming as if there is some deflection. We need to focus on helping the victims and enabling them to take action when they need to. If it pleases you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Longmore. Senator Fraser-Binns.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, since 2013, I have been sitting in this house, and it should be about 7 years that I've been sitting here. In those 7 years, at minimum, we would have had 14 occasions in which to highlight the challenge it faces our women and in particular, to look at the issue of violence against women or discrimination against women. And those occasions would come normally in March and in November. My memory serves me correct that during those 7 years and 14 occasions, I can't recall at any time that whether it was a statement by the minister or a motion on adjournment, that we have had more than 2 speakers, normally one from the opposition and one from the government. And on those occasions, both speakers would condemn and speak in very strong language our own opposition to discrimination and all form of violence against women. And because of that, I have no doubt in my mind that the history-making Senate, which for the first time has an increased number of women sitting in the Senate, condemns violence against women. So whether you are a government senator or an opposition senator, we condemn all forms of violence against women. But as I said earlier, never in those 7 years, never in any of those 14 occasions at minimum did we have more than 2 speakers. In the other place, and certainly in the Senate, we have had far more than 2 speakers on both sides. And it compels one to stop and to ask, what has changed? Because something must have changed for us to break this tradition. And if something has changed, are we dealing with it? Now, in my opinion, something has changed. Something has changed because the issue surrounding violence against women is no longer about somebody who we don't know. It's no longer about somebody who sits outside these hollowed walls. But it has to do with somebody who sits with us, somebody who is a part of us as parliamentarians, someone who is a part of the 84. And in my mind, it is because of that change why we're having this discussion today. I, as a mother, as a woman, as a female who attended all female schools until my university days, can tell you, I am disappointed. I am disappointed because we all know in our hearts that something has changed. We all know that the reason why there is so much emotion in this place and there was so much emotion in the other place in the last 2 weeks is because something has changed. Our heart is not right, and we know it. But I am sad. I am sad because we refuse to say what has changed. And Mr. President, it is the refusal to say what has changed why all of us here have no moral authority to talk to Jamaicans. It is because of the refusal to accept that something has changed why we in here cannot ask Jamaicans to come forward and talk about violence. It is because of that refusal to accept that something has changed. There's no mother in here, can truly say that we have done right by our sons. I'm not going on the legal part because that's for another discussion. But there are certain facts which are just totally beyond dispute. The one for my purpose here is that one of our 84 persons have been caught in an act of violence against a female. And if we cannot accept that, then we cannot do what Senator Longmore asked us to do. Because Senator Morris, you see, Mr. President, I hear it's an allegation. As I said, I'm not talking about the law, because there's a higher standard there, which in my mind doesn't have, that standard is not applicable in here. We are supposed to be the paragon of virtue and of morals. Yeah? And if you want to go by way of allegation, the allegation must be so overwhelming that the alleged felt it was important to separate himself from the party, that it is so overwhelming that he felt it important to take a leave of absence. Now, I'm not going to go into niceties because it doesn't benefit me. And I know that people will say what they want to say and somebody will respond to me after this, and that is fine. But if we are true to our conscience, then the fact is that we know that things are not what they used to be because one of us have run afoul of the law. And as parliamentarians, we are held to a higher standard. And part of that standard is calling it as we see it. So the perception that the opposition does not stand by a statement or does not support the statement is erroneous. We support the statement to the extent that it condemns violence against women. But we do not stand by the statement because we believe that it has not gone far enough to say not only do we not support violence against women, but we cannot sit with someone in our midst who have been accused and where the evidence supports that accusation and allegation of violence against women. And unless we are prepared to accept it, we cannot come to the Jamaican people and ask for anything. I could deflect. I could talk about the fact that we need to focus some more on support systems. I agree. We have to give the psychological support. I agree. We have to talk about battered women syndrome. I agree. We have to do more to get rid of corporal punishment in our homes and in our schools. I agree. We have to do more to talk, to create a gentler and calmer society. I agree. But the fact is that we can't be instrument of advocacy when we cannot accept that there is something wrong. And so, Mr. President, I want to say, on behalf of us four ladies in here, on this side, and the three men on this side, and Senator Crawford, who's not here, that we not only condemn violence against women in all its forms, whether it is physical violence or verbal violence, we condemn it in all its forms. But we also condemn violence against women, particularly when they are committed by someone who sits in the highest court of the land, the Parliament of Jamaica. If it pleases you.
Mr. President, I...
Thank you, Senator Fraser-Binns. Thank you, Senator Campbell, please.
One of the rare occasions I get up to speak on anything in this place because I tend to do a little more listening. But it's one of the occasions where I have to. Because I'm disappointed in that we seem to be going down the road of taking away from the role that this Parliament ought to play in this society. Firstly, I cannot go along with a statement which seems to undermine one of the tenets upon which a society is built. This society is built on a fundamental rule which says that the rule of law underpins all that we do. The rule of law is paramount, and this being the highest court in the land, it ought to abide by the very rules it has created in order to help the society to do its business, to order our relationships. And we're failing to do that. I hear a statement coming out that we should condemn an individual before we actually determine.
Why you condemn him? You put him aside.
Well, let me say something, and I'd ask you. At no point did I hear anyone on the other side speaking, and I seek to interrupt. I don't do it. For one reason, there is a standing order which says you do not interrupt, save and except in circumstances where you're seeking clarity or on a point of order. Well, so let us try and abide by those basic rules which we have set. And so here we are. We have set rules ourselves, and we can't abide by them. Oh, ironic. Oh, indeed. But what is the overriding consideration? That the rule of law ought to govern. And it's only in exceptional circumstances that we go beyond. So here we are. We have determined that we are going to condemn an individual contrary to the rule of law. We're going to say that because we have seen a video which cannot stand any lawyer worth his salt in this country would go before the Chief Justice tomorrow morning and destroy that for what it is. And let me state my position very clearly. Absolutely no time will I condone any man placing his hand on any woman, or for that matter, any man placing his hand on another man, because it amounts to an abuse of that man's right to the space which he occupies. So let us not, and let us accept for what it is. In this country, we have more male violence on male than anything else. Let us accept that. So when we are crafting a narrative, let us do so in a manner which respects the individual's right to space, to life, to occupying and to space and doing things. You're falling into that trap, Senator Bunting. I understand. But so let us reframe the conversation. Let's redraft the narrative that let us condemn, and we must accept, because we seem to be skewing the conversation. We're speaking about male violence on female, and the data does not support it. I am shocked at the level of male violence on male. And understand me clearly. Let us clearly accept that this society is raw. The wounds are gaping. And let us do what we have to do. Don't let us stay here and talk about deflection. The reality jumps up at us that male violence in this country is at such a level that we run the risk. You take the average 14 to 18-year-old, and he says, I don't expect to live beyond 20. So let me, because he has seen his brothers and his uncles and all his male relatives, who upwards of 1,000 of them going on an annual basis. And how does it happen? It's not the women who are doing it to them. It's man doing it to man. And so let us try and redraft that narrative, which says condemn violence in its entirety. And at the same time, accept that because of our history, you see, we don't want to face up to it. That we don't want to take the conversation where it should go in the full scheme of things. That we men have been brought up in a society where we were taught to be violent, and we have to unlearn that. So what Senator Longmore says is very real. But what we seem to be doing is jumping up. As soon as we see a video, our knee pops up. That's not where it ought to go. That's not where it goes. Senator Brown, you know that's not where it ought to go. The conversation must speak to violence in its entirety. Yes, but that's where it ought to go. Yes, we have the immediate thing of having to deal with women who have been impacted. Yes, and you look at all the several cases that we have had in recent times. But if we were to look at the numbers, we had several men in Westmoreland, 3 in one community in one evening. Who were the ones doing it? The evidence doesn't suggest that it is women doing it to them. It's male violence on male. So let us redraft the conversation. Let's redo the narrative. Right? Yes. So, and let us accept that what we have been doing is, in fact, trying to, by taking the approach with it, is to undermine the rule of law. We don't want to go there. This is a parliament which believes in the rule of law. And so if we are going to be faithful to the Constitution and to helping our people in the wider communities to understand what we are here to do, we have to say that we do not subscribe to the kind of conversations which have been taking place here, which is to say that we condemn a man based on evidence which is not conclusive. We do not do that in Jamaica. That's not the rule of law. We rely on evidence which is concrete. And we may take positions, you may say that, you know, we take positions based on what the mob says, and that's not what. Oh, and that's for another issue. No, I'm not forgetting it. I'm saying if for any reason we have put things before individuals, because we could go and we could throw up all the other cases where we could say, you know, Miss So-and-so was convicted, Mr. So-and-so broke his son's arm, Mr. So... That's not what we're about. That's not... Well, let's say you had a convenient hearing deficit. That we sometimes hear that which makes us feel good, and well, but I urge my friends, that we be moderate in our approach, and let us do that which doesn't really undermine the rule of law, and let us, yes, condemn in its entirety violence against our people generally. But in the specific cases that we have highlighted, we condemn those acts of violence against women in particular. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Campbell. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm approaching my 67th year on this earth. I never slapped a woman yet. Never beat up a woman. I was beaten as a child. I grew up with a single mother. I grew up with a slave background too, but I never beat a woman yet. Yeah, man, I'm rude to people who are rude, but I never beat a woman yet. And I don't intend for the rest of my life so to do. So I can't justify, Senator Brown, the beating of a woman by any man. Mr. President, I have imagined many times a place in Spanish Town described as William. William. That's the gallows. And I have held the view over many years that I need no legal representation, Senator Morris. If somebody violates my daughter, or my sisters, or my wife, or when my mother was alive, my mother, I need no representation. If I had to walk to the William, I would walk proudly, knowing that the honor of my family was held high and restored. So I don't need a lawyer once the jungle justice, in the absence of the rule of law, kicks in. I've held that view for many, many years. I never beat a woman yet, and nobody must beat a woman for me or any other woman. So I want to make that clear. So, Mr. President, I am capable of looking at violence in its entirety, which is what is being urged of us. But I'm also capable, Senator Campbell, of looking at violence in its specific, because not one or the other. The beating with the stool, my friend Senator Brown, which you condemn, I know that. Even if you say otherwise, I know you condemn it. The beating of a woman with a stool is a specific which we must address. And we must address it because, as Senator Fraser Bin said, it was done by one of us. It was done by one of us, one of the 84. And as I say, the pain of the abuse will never pass, but the stain of the abuser will last forever. Whether that abuser is a user of profanity or a user of a stool. The stain will last forever, and I, as one of the 84, don't want that stain drained upon me. Are you, Senator Campbell, or any one of us who have lived a life without beating women? Lawmaker must not be woman beater, and woman beater must not be lawmaker. So don't tell me what other side do. I am dealing with this specific, and if you have specific about the other side, bring it. Bring it. Bring it on. But we must face the specific as we face the general. So I start there. Mr. President, what is the best way to help the victim? What's the best way to help the victim? To condemn the perpetrator. The best way to help the victim is to condemn the perpetrator. The best way to deal with the victim is to condemn the perpetrator. And I have not heard the condemnation of that specific perpetrator coming from that side. I have not heard it. The best way to deal with the victim, not the only way, not the only way, but the best way is to condemn the perpetrator. And I condemn that member of parliament, seen on the video, beating that woman in the way it was done. I condemn, and I urge you all to condemn. Mr. President, much has been said so far about the rule of law. And I know others is going to get up and talk about the rule of law. But let us be clear. Which rule of law allows a man to beat a woman with a stool and go without consequences? Which rule of law said that? Which rule of law said allow a man to beat a woman the way we saw it on the video, and go without consequence? And goes with, you can go down halfway through court. I am talking about the court of Jamaican people. They know what is wrong. They know what is wrong from what is technically not guilty. They know what is wrong. And to beat a woman with a stool, to beat a woman in your child is wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. So I don't know any rule of law which allow a man to beat a woman with a stool and go without consequence. You see, Senator Campbell, I don't want to say you're distracted, you know, and you're not paying attention. Because let me put it this way. There's a consequence called resignation. That's not a rule of law consequence. That's not a criminal punishment, but it is a morally right thing to do. So don't give me a rule of law when the consequence I am asking for is a resignation from the Parliament. Because that's not a criminal offense. That's not a criminal punishment. It is morally right to do. Mr. President, in 2020, in the House of Lords, and we take some guidance beyond our standing orders from May's parliamentary procedure. There's a parliamentarian named Lord Ahmed. He was accused of sexually harassing a female. The Parliamentary Ethics Committee, the House of Lords Committee, carried out an investigation, brought back a report, and he resigned. He resigned. He resigned. He resigned. Not a rule of law. It is the morally right thing to do. So the issue for me, come on, my friend, the beating of that woman is the end in itself. The beating of that woman is the end itself. So the opposition elsewhere has brought a motion. If you are saying that at the end of that motion you support the resignation, I am just ahead of you, because I don't believe we need to wait for it. People must be willing to accept the consequence of their action. They must be willing to say, I did wrong. It's not a court business, Sinclair. Sinclair is not a court thing. Sinclair was acquitted, not even called upon to plead. Not even called upon to plead. Not even called upon to plead. Sinclair, not even called upon to plead. Not even called upon to plead. Not even called upon to plead. The judge dismissed the issue because of afraid. Bear that in mind. But Sinclair, you will not distract me from saying one of your own beat that woman with a stool. One of your own beat that woman with a stool. One of your own beat that woman with a stool. And let me make it clear. Since you want to go to that, I said it before and I'm going to say it again. Your leader threatened a female poll clerk to box her in an election in West Central St. Andrew. Since you want to go there, I can go there too. But let us be clear. Resignation of George Wright. The resignation of George Wright is what is necessary. He should not sit amongst us, the 84, and we must stop defend him.
Why did you bring this statement?
So, did I say, Mr. President, did I say I thank Senator Rodriguez for bringing the statement here and having this debate on the issue? Because by our raising it, it has given the country a chance to hear again about the egregious beating, the barbaric beating of that woman by one of us. That one of us, Senator Tamina Johnson, as Senator Morris pointed out, is, let's put at the same level as your flexi rape comment. And the way you all treated the flexi rape comment. And A.J. Nicholson came and apologized. Just as the president apologized for using profanity. Right? The reality is, unless there's a resignation, the stain will be on all of us. But your side will stand more condemned for doing nothing to remove the stain from the parliament of a parliamentarian beating a woman with a stool. And Senator Samuda, you can make a sort of vote, but what I know as a fact, as a young man, you don't support what happened. I know that. And you can't deny it. You don't support what happened. You don't support it. Time to fire George Wright. George Wright must resign, or else this parliament is condemned as supporting woman beater. May it please you, Mr. President, and no amount of profanity can stop me from saying George Wright is the woman beater and he must go from our parliament.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Brown.
I have made unwanted history. I'm speaking twice in one day.
Observe that the first time you speak was much longer than the second time that you're going to speak.
Very well, very well. But you know, Mr. President, I think that we can agree on certain things. One, I think that it is accepted that I don't even think my colleagues are suggesting that there is anybody on this side who is supporting the beating of women. I don't think they are saying that. And indeed, Mr. President, I know that all the members over here, personally and otherwise, have condemned that behavior generally and in the particular case. So it's not a situation that this side is silent on the particular situation in the video. What I understand my friends to be saying, and what they have said in this house and outside of this house, is that a particular person should be named and punished because they say it is that particular person. And in justification of that point of view, I have heard some interesting comments in the Senate today. Mr. President, I'm sorry. When I was growing up, and still to an extent, extrajudicial killing was a problem. And we had a lobby against it. There was a view nonetheless by a group in the society, and many that were killed deserve it anyhow because we know them are criminal. But we said that the rule of law...
Sorry, Senator Bram, apparently your colleagues are not hearing you so well.
Well, I'm so sorry. Maybe if I come up here. What I'm saying, Mr. President, yes. What I'm saying is that extrajudicial killings were justified and are justified by many Jamaicans because they say that the police know what they are doing. And if it is not, and I'm going to ask Senator Lambert, listen to what I said. Because I listen to you carefully, you know, listen to you carefully. And I don't want you to leave today and say that I am supporting violence against women. And I don't want you to leave here to say that I am supporting the video beating. Because that is not true. Right? I want you to listen to what I'm saying. But what I'm saying to you is that it is violence against women, condemned. The video beating, condemned. Yes. But I was drawing the analogy with the beating or the killing, extrajudicial killing of criminals. Indeed, that has created such a problem, and so many innocent people were dispatched in this type of judgments that were exercised. But the reason why extrajudicial killing, Mr. President, was not supported is that the rule of law that we practice does not support it. So, my friends on that side love the Constitution. They do. Indeed, when it is appropriate, and it might be mentioned here today, the Constitution, the Constitution, the Constitution. And so, even in the worst of situation, regrettably, we still have the Constitution. And so then, I look at a video, and I don't know who it is, but I see the beating. Senator Brown says a particular person. Should I then use what Senator Brown says and describe it as a particular person when I don't know, Mr. President? Should I use it and call up somebody's name, Mr. President? When I know it's fine, no, fine. I will say what I'm saying. and I've just started. Right? Call him stoolman if you wish. But am I to come in here? Suppose I said the person in the video with the stool looked like Senator Morris. And I genuinely believe it looked like Senator Morris. Right? Would it be appropriate? Would it be appropriate, Mr. President? Because I look at the head top and I decided it looked like Senator Morris to come here and call up him name, Mr. President. Use the privilege of Parliament to call up him name. It would not be. That's what our rules say that we ought not to do. I hear, you see, Senator Morris mentioned, Senator Morris mentioned Mr. A.J. Nicholson, former senator. But there was no doubt that it was former Senator A.J. Nicholson who said what he said. They had no video that one had to look at. And if you look at a video, it will be clear that he was distinguished and distinctive. So it's not the same analogy. I personally feel that in the circumstances, I can't say is this gentleman. And I shouldn't say it. But I hear my friends, and at least one of them, we are not talking about the law in this place. We are held to a higher standard. I can't understand, my friend I know understand this legal business. I know she does. She says she not deal with law, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
If we're not
Mr. President, just a point of clarification, because I think perhaps the first time I'm going to interrupt Senator Braham. But Senator Braham, I just want to clarify that there was nothing to infer that there's a disregard for the law. The intent was to say that in here what we're talking about was a standard of proof, because the matter of the law and the standard has to be dealt with at a different place.
All right, okay.
And if you recall, sir, I then went on to talk about the moral obligation. So I just want to make it clear so that there's no misunderstanding, because as my friend knows, as my former lecturer, he knows that as an officer of the court, that the law is very important.
Thank you, Senator Fraser. Senator Braham, continue, please.
To my mind, what Senator Fraser Bin says demonstrates that she recognized she made an error. And I accept that you have made an error. When you say, and you say, the words were said, we are not talking about the law. We can't say that in this place. Neither can we say it in the country, in the bar, or on the football field. Because if you say that, we will be overcome and destroyed by greater lawlessness that happen in this country. Indeed, Mr. President, a statement was made that Mr. Wright should be fired. Well, no, you said fired as well. Believe me. And I'm coming to the resignation. Just let me finish. We don't always agree, but let me finish. The point is, though, that the Constitution again binds how a member of either house is dealt with. Right? There's a particular constitutional case that Senator Brown mentioned with great glee at every opportunity. But in a strange way, that case also governs the situation. So he can't be fired. It's a fact. And you can't go to him and force him to resign. Look at the case. If you want to support for my legal position, look at the very case you like. You cannot do it. You don't remember the case. And then, Mr. President, it is said that the person has not said it is him or not him. I heard a member on the radio saying that in Jamaica we do not have the right against self-incrimination. I heard somebody say it. But the fact is, we do. And when it is exercised, no, it's a fact. When it is exercised, what do I do? Can I then say you should not exercise it? Fine, let me finish. You're not allowing me to finish, you know. You don't agree with me, but let me finish. Let me well, yes. The point is, though, Mr. President, those rights are enshrined, and the persons in this House, in the Senate, and in the other one are entitled to the benefits of those rights, whether I like it or I don't like it. And when it touches the people in this House, or the Senate, or the other House, Mr. President, I cannot, with all due respect, call for its abandonment. I cannot do that, and it would not be right. It would not be right, Mr. President. So I wish to say that Jamaicans are entitled to the rights given to them. And I am one of those who says that the Constitution doesn't take account of the community as it should. But that's the Constitution we have. We have to live with it until we change it. And until such time, and indeed it's very telling that other authorities have said they can't make out the person. I don't know who the person is, so should I come here, Mr. President, and stand in all conscience that I know the person, that is him? I can't do that. How can I do it? That's what I want to know, and that's what I'm grappling with. How can I do it when I don't know? I haven't been to Westmoreland and meet one of those witnesses who tell me it's him. The person questioned, I haven't said it is him. I can't recognize him. How can I do it and be true and faithful to the law that I swear to uphold? That's what I want to know. And, you know, that is a challenge. So at the end of the day, I condemn the beater in the tape, on the video, whoever the person is. I condemn women beaters personally. But I personally will uphold the rule of law. You don't agree with me? She don't. But she was a good student, you know, so she can challenge the teacher.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Bunting.
Thank you, Mr. President. This afternoon, a number of speakers, including Senator Campbell, and a few sittings ago, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, have kept repeating that this Parliament is the highest court. The Speaker was saying that repeatedly when she was preventing the opposition moving the resolution to refer MP George Wright to the Ethics Committee. Mr. Speaker, it is a slogan that we hear often. But really, sorry, Mr. President, it is a slogan that we hear often. We know what we wish. But it is not meaningful. It is not meaningful in our context. First of all, the concept of Parliament being the highest court is an anachronism. It really is just empty rhetoric. The House of Lords in the UK used to, way, way, way back, have a judicial function. But it hasn't had that for a very long time. Jamaica's parliament has never had a judicial function, nor does it operate as a court. Nor does it operate as a court. While our parliament governs its own procedures in accordance with the Constitution and the standing orders, and of course its internal workings are not subject to the jurisdiction of the courts of law, our parliament is in no meaningful sense a court, much less the highest court. So we keep getting drawn into this sort of legalistic argument as if to suggest that unless we can meet some standard of evidence that would meet the criminal standard in court, we cannot act. That is not true. In every organization, persons are held accountable for their actions, whether or not it meets the bar of a criminal charge. Every organization. Accountability is central to management, to leadership, to governance, whether in the public or private sectors. Mr. President, a couple of weeks ago, I listened to the House of Representatives at their sitting where they were debating violence against women. Many members, particularly female members, spoke passionately and were rightly outraged over the series of recent violent incidents. I think the murder of Kanice Jackson and at the time the disappearance of Natalie Dawkins was topical. Members were making suggestions to remove judicial discretion, remove the right to plea bargain for these offenses. And, I believe, while some of them I think was misguided, it was all well-intentioned. And it showed courage and passion. Not long after that was when this video started circulating. The video showed a vicious, brutal, repeated beating of a woman by a man. She didn't die, but only by the grace of God, because any single one of those blows with a stool could have been fatal. Any single one of those blows with that stool could have been fatal. Are we sending the message that only when the woman dies, when the victim dies, is when our outrage rises to a level to act? No, we cannot convict the member in this house of a criminal offense. That's not our job. We are not a court. But we can act. Some say this is speculation. This is speculation that the man repeatedly, viciously, brutally striking the woman rather, drawing for a stool, a wooden stool, and repeatedly beating this woman over her upper body, head, shoulders. Wow. Let me ask, which one of us in this chamber, which one of us in this parliament, if wrongfully identified as that perpetrator, would not immediately deny that it was us?
All when at them deny. All when at them do a job.
Which one of us, innocent, wrongly identified as the perpetrator of this brutal, vicious beating of a woman, would not immediately jump to defend our honor and say, clear this up, that's not me, I wasn't there.
Wasn't me.
But when we talk about, well, he has neither confirmed nor denied, that is, we know, every one of us here knows what the truth is. George Wright will no longer sit in the GLP government caucus, not because of speculation, because while he may have the privilege of not incriminating himself in a criminal investigation, when his party general secretary or leader or senior officer calls him and says, what happens? He doesn't have that luxury. So that is why the party can act. The same party that forms the government. That is why it's not because of speculation that George Wright is now on leave from the House. The Speaker gave him leave but said nothing as to reason. So what that suggests now that, you know, the people of Central Westmoreland will go unrepresented. Taxpayers' money, we are not told if it is still being paid or not, but we have not been offered the courtesy of an explanation by either the member or the Speaker who granted him leave. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, sorry?
Is he being treated?
Well, I am not qualified to answer that. So, Mr. President, this idea of a criminal standard being necessary to condemn the actions, to demand his resignation, if he doesn't provide it for every one of us here to ostracize him when he comes to this house. If you're talking about unity, let us unite around that. Because he's an embarrassment to every one of us, whichever side he come from. And we must show the courage to act. We must show the courage to act. Even when Martin Luther King and Gandhi and those civil rights activists thought they were powerless, or people thought they were powerless, they still had the courage to act with whatever range they had, whatever limited range of actions were available to them. They had the courage to do it. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, the joint statement, the so-called joint statement, because we now know that the female senators, opposition senators, did not sign off on it. And it is not because there is anything in here that anyone would disagree with. But this is not a courageous statement. This is not a courageous statement. What the female senators, opposition senators, have said is that this does not represent them because it does not go far enough.
Unite with wrong. No
You know,
right. WRIGHT.
Peter Tosh said, I don't want peace. I want justice. A number of the senators from that side have said, oh, but you've missed the opportunity to provide unity. But unity is not the most important thing here. It is justice. It is accountability. That victim, the best thing we can do for her and for all the victims that we can do here in this capacity is to hold a member of Parliament accountable, demand his resignation. Whether or not we have the legal authority to fire him, we can demand his resignation. If everyone on that side and everyone on this side demand his resignation, he will not be able to come through those doors again in this chamber. So this, you know, I don't believe in this, you know, okay, let us show some, you know, 4 cents of unity, make everything nice again. Let's not upset anybody. That's what they told all the civil rights leaders. But they continued to give good trouble. Good trouble. And you know, in holding a member accountable, we're not condemning anybody because everyone has a path to remediation. Everyone has a path to remediation. We're condemning his actions. We're not saying that anybody, even some the most violent criminal, we say the main purpose, we try to rehabilitate them.
And it begins with confession.
Well, you know, I was raised in a church, Lamu. And you know, for the sacrament of reconciliation, there were 4 elements. The first one was contrition. Contrition. You must be sorry for what you did. And the second one was confession. Owning up, honestly accepting responsibility to what you did. We haven't seen any of that.
Nor from his supporters.
The third is satisfaction. Doing what is possible to repair the harm. And only then can we talk about forgiveness by either man or a higher power. So, Mr. President, the statement, we don't disagree with what is in the statement, but reading it, listening to it, in a sense, is analogous to eating a tasteless bowl of porridge. It may have some nutrition in it. It may be good for you to an extent, but it's not spicy. It's not tasty. It's not going to be memorable. It's not going to stay with those who are hearing it. They're not going to be moved by the passion and the conviction of the persons who wrote this statement. In fact, Mr. President, vague generalities, quite frankly, would make me, and I'm sure the opposition senators, would make me feel like an accessory after the fact to that beating. So this kind of vague delude, you know, sort of obfuscating the thing, talking all about, no, it's not, suddenly it's not about accountability. It's a national problem. And the sources of, you know, paternal deprivation that may have caused it in this case. It is not violence against women anymore, even though it was 2 weeks ago. It's not violence against any women anymore. It's no gender-based violence or societal violence. You know, Mr. President, in another country, they did the same thing. When the Black Lives Matter movement was getting militant and getting support across the world, you know, they come back, well, it's not just black lives, it's all lives matter. Of course all lives matter, but it was not responding to the exigencies of the moment. the structured institutional racism that black people were facing in the United States. So in that context, saying all lives matter was a deflection, a watering down, diverting attention. So what we're here to deal with today is not the societal violence, is not man-on-man violence. We're here to deal with the violence against women, a most egregious example of which we saw on that tape and was committed by a member of Parliament, of this Parliament. So, Mr. President,
Peter, somebody said that the bowl is a watered-down bowl. A watered-down bowl of porridge.
Water down.
People are watching now, and I'm saying, come in.
Mr. President, it is always the right time to do the right thing. But in this specific case, right is wrong.
Right is wrong. Say it again.
Victor Wright is wrong.
Not Victor Wright.
George Wright is wrong. George Wright. George Wright is wrong. The member from Central Westmoreland, does not deserve to continue to represent the people of Central Westmoreland. And all of us must be united in calling for his resignation. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise because I feel I have to speak. But my heart is full, and to be honest, my mind is kind of racing. Because today's engagement here, I think, in some ways, I shouldn't be surprised, but in some ways I still manage to be. I think that says it well. Disappointed, but not surprised. But I was hopeful. And when we determined to put forward the Speaker's statement with an intention that it cover all women parliamentarians, as she had intended when it was conceptualized, I would have thought that even if we had suggested adjustments, or even if it could be adopted jointly, but supplemented with views, it still would have been an opportunity to go above the politics, to send a signal above the politics. Because certainly the voice of everyone that has spoken on this matter has not been to water down the issue. And to speak about violence and violence in society is not to water down the issue of gender-based violence. It's actually a recognition of the true embedded cyclic nature of what we are reaping in Jamaica now. Because the violence in the home, causes the children to learn violence and to either become abusers or abused. It makes the violence enter the schools and the communities. And the young men spoken about earlier who don't see themselves living past 18 or 20 and therefore don't care about anything are often products of this very same violence. When our colleague speaks about a therapeutic approach, she's speaking about solutions. When our colleague speaks about the pain that families bear, she's speaking about the reality. And when we speak about the need for unity, it's actually a genuine call for us to really sort of take this as a learning point in our society. Because there are many lessons that can be taken from this. But the fact that this is a national issue of grave, endemic, and systemic proportions should be our focus. No headline, no point one, I think, could outvalue the value of what could have been a full unified position. And not to devalue the views of our men at all. You all know I love and value you greatly. But I think if we could have had a woman's position today, it would have been a good thing. And the voice of men is important in the discussion about gender-based violence. And it's in fact one of the things that we call for, to say we have to expand the partnerships around the discussion if we are going to have real conversations and have real impact and real behavioral change. And it will require behavioral change, and it's going to require cultural change. And that will be in the politics on both sides as well. And I think when the Jamaican people look on and they hear the barbs and the allegations going one way, and they know the history and read the papers as well, they make their own conclusions. I think Senator Scott Motley spoke earlier about the Jamaican people making their own conclusions, and I believe that as well. And I'm sorry Senator Morris left, because he addressed me specifically and personally. And he spoke to a disappointment in me personally. I know I said my heart is full. Yes. Don't worry about me, Senator. Don't worry about me. I get emotional sometimes watching news because I feel things. You're most kind. No. You're kind, but no. Thank you. The point being, when I hear an argument that this is about, that the only reason we're talking about this issue today is because of a video. The video has brought to light again the issue of violence and the inability to settle disputes. And yes, some of these terms have language now. Intimate partner violence, domestic violence, family violence. These are real terms because they help in us developing programs that allow us to systematically unpack and deal with issues. They're not watering down. They're analyzing and moving forward, because these are things that have been with us for years. And we have to deal with them. Which is why not only am I offended by any attempt to devalue my position or work on this area. And I really wish Senator Morris had remained. Because I started here reading, and maybe you can play it back on YouTube for him, Senator Brown, as you have your feed watching as well. The issues that I raised sitting right over there, and it's actually where Senator Scott Motley, where you are sitting now, because they have moved a row. So I was in the second row, one seat in. When I read about the 6 pregnant women murdered in 6 months, and the 8-year-old raped, and the 83-year-old woman beheaded, and the children raped, and the family in Irwin, and the sheer barbaric nature of the violence meted out against our women, and that we've been trying to work on. And when I was on that side, calling on then Minister responsible for gender, Sandria Faulkner, to bring forward the action plan to deal with the elimination of violence against women, and calling for the motion, which, yes, has now finally had a report issued after 2 administrations and, 3 administrations and 2 joint select committees, that the 4 acts are finally going to be amended. And the Domestic Violence Act, just to be clear, the amendments, which include increasing the penalty for breaching a protection order, increasing the number of people who can apply for a protection order, because, sometimes the very same victims we're speaking about as not being empowered, now they will be able to have someone apply for the protection order for them if they can't make it to the police station. Someone can apply for them, whether it's someone from the Bureau or the Office of the Children's Advocate or other institutions that have been identified. It will be ensuring that the issue of cyber harassment and pornographic bullying, that these things are dealt with. And those things will be dealt with before the Joint Select Committee, because those are the low-hanging fruit on which you will recall the Joint Select Committee was quite clear these things can be done now. So expanding the protection immediately and then moving to a broader review. But these things that were things that we saw were needed then, and they have taken a long time to get done. The legislative process is too slow. The consultation was important, but to my mind, it was too slow. But we have been doing the work that is necessary to actually effect change, although, again, these are deeply intractable problems, so the impact takes time. But we are, not only have we built a new shelter and are working on 2 more so that there is a place for women to go when they have nowhere else, so they can escape, so that they can get the training and the economic empowerment so that they can re-enter society, and so that they can take their children with them, because some women stay because they don't have anywhere to take the children with them, because the NGO-run shelter that we have in Jamaica, that the only one that existed before the new national shelter, didn't have space to accommodate children. We are changing the configuration of the police stations so that they can accommodate these types of sensitive allegations. We're training police at all levels in numbers never seen before about how to deal with these matters so that they can be appropriately dealt with, victims counseled and empowered to bring actions against their abusers. We have gotten support from the international community, ensuring that the Spotlight Initiative, which is providing $10 billion US dollars over 3 years to support our integrated action plan, to strategic action plan to end violence against women, and the integrated action plan to respond to child violence. And together they also have a family violence element, which deals with rehabilitation, It deals with the prevention, dispute resolution, as well as, of course, ensuring that we're looking at both sides of the issue, the male and the female side. But the work is what is important, Mr. President. It is the work, to me, that always remains important. And I think if we remain focused on that, then Jamaica will win. It is critical, I think, that we note, and I think Senator Braham, had already clarified the fact that not only did Minister Grange speak on behalf of the women on this side initially as soon as the video came out, but we have all condemned it and in different fora. But to focus on the video, to me, is just to miss the point. It is a point, and it's important, especially because it has brought all this national attention to the issue. And to my mind, what's important is to use and leverage the attention for good, and not for headlines, but to actually focus on the attention, on the issue at hand, which is to tell victims that, listen, you can get support. You can, there are places to go. You can change how your life goes forward. You can, when you are in the bar, tell your brethren, listen, this is not how you deal with a woman, it's not how you treat women. We need to start, this is the conversation now for men to think about how it is, as has been said, how boys are raised by men and women. This is the important, these are important issues. And for these matters, for the things which I have just been said to be called foolishness, shows the true heart of the utterance of whoever said that on this issue. And that you beat your chest about the ignorant positions. You know, when Senator Morris spoke about, all right. Not listening to that, but I think about the fact that there was a member, a colleague of yours on that side, who had started to send me harassing emails and who I had to report to the police. And I was even advised to stop running for a period of time. And I reached a point where the issue was now whether to issue a public charge, to go public with it. The police were clear that cybercrime was being committed. It was clear I was in fear, and they recognized it as justifiable. And I decided not to press a charge. I decided not to go public with it either. And it was a struggle, because I said this could be helpful for women to see someone taking an action when they feel vulnerable. And I'm saying, if I feel vulnerable, imagine someone who doesn't have the type of support around me that I do. And then I thought about the politics and the drama, and I didn't. And I didn't. So for whatever other reasons, I didn't. And I don't consider myself a disempowered woman. So the choices that women make in different circumstances, I don't judge. I just recognize that we need more systems in place to support women who need it. And the choices we make about speaking on different things are personal choices for all sorts of different reasons. But I cannot help but think what a victory this could have been today had we all been able to come together. And you know, and this wouldn't have muzzled anyone. Supplemental positions could always have been taken, but if we could have unified at the start, I think we'd have had a different day, and we could have sent a different signal. But the work will continue, and I believe in our future. I believe that we will do better as a country, that we will get on top of this violence, this scourge that bedevils us every day and impacts our society in ways that we probably don't even realize. But, Mr. President, I know that the hour is late. So we have had opportunities missed, but we will have future opportunities. And I know that we will see a better day. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Leader.
Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business today. Might I ask that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed?
Thank you, Madam Leader. The question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Aye. Against? This Honourable Senate now stands adjourned.
Give yourself a fighting chance. Wear an approved helmet. A message from the Road Safety Unit in the Ministry of Transport and Mining.